Nobody tells you when you become the backup plan. There is no conversation. No moment where someone sits you down and explains the role you have been quietly assigned. It just happens. Slowly. In the small moments you do not notice until one day you look back and realize that every single time something went wrong for anyone around you, you were the one they called. Not first. Never first. But always eventually. Always reliably. Always without question. My name is Rania. And I was my family's backup plan for as long as I can remember. Not the favorite. Not the celebrated one. Not the one they worried about or protected or called just to hear my voice. I was the one they remembered when the primary options had run out. When the money was short. When the plan had fallen apart. When everyone else was unavailable or unwilling. Then they called Rania. I grew up the second of 4 children. My older sister Hannah was the firstborn. She carried all the weight of expectation and pride that comes with that position. My younger brother Tariq was the only son, and in our family that meant something specific and unspoken that everyone understood without it ever being said. My youngest sister Mia was the baby, soft and sweet and protected from everything difficult. And I was the one in the middle who had somehow been assigned the role of solution. It started small the way these things always do. I was 15 when I first lent money from my savings to my mother for a household bill. She said she would replace it at the end of the month. She did not. I did not bring it up because I did not want to make anyone uncomfortable. I was 19 when I dropped my university plans for a year because my father's business had a difficult season and someone needed to work and contribute to the house immediately. Hannah had just started her postgraduate program. Tariq was in his final school year. Mia was too young. So I did it. I told myself it was 1 year. It became 2. By the time I returned to my studies, I had lost my scholarship and had to rebuild everything from a slower and harder starting point. Nobody acknowledged that. Not directly. Not with the weight it deserved. Life moved on and I moved with it, and I told myself that this was what love looked like in a family like ours. That sacrifice was its own quiet reward. But what I did not know in all those years of being available was what would happen the day I finally was not. I was 28 when I made the decision that changed everything. I had been offered a position in another city. A real one. A role I had worked toward for 3 years through evening courses and early mornings and weekends spent building skills while everyone else rested. The salary was significant. The opportunity was genuine. The life it could give me was one I had only let myself imagine in private. I told my family at dinner on a Sunday. My mother's face changed in a way I recognized immediately. Not the change of someone processing unexpected news. The change of someone doing rapid calculations about what this meant for them. She said, "But who will handle things here?" Not congratulations. Not "I am so proud of you." Not "tell me everything about it." Who will handle things here? My father looked at the table. Hannah said nothing. Tariq said he was sure I would figure out a way to still help from a distance. Mia looked confused about why this was complicated. I sat at that table and felt something finalize inside me. Like a door I had been standing in front of for years had just become something I was ready to walk through regardless of what was on the other side. I said I was taking the position. The weeks before I left were the most revealing of my entire life. My mother found a reason to bring up the position in every conversation, always framed around inconvenience. Around what would be harder without me there. Around the things I currently handled that would now need to be redistributed. Not once around what this meant for me. Tariq called twice that month. Both times the conversation ended with a question about whether I could sort something out before I left. A bill. A contact. A form that needed completing. Hannah came to see me the evening before my departure. I thought she had come to say goodbye properly. She sat in my room and talked for 20 minutes about her own struggles and then asked if I could lend her money before I left because things were tight. I looked at her for a long moment. And then I did something I had never done in my entire life in that house. I said no. I said I needed everything I had for my own move and my own start. I said I was sorry, but the answer was no. She left within 10 minutes. I packed the rest of my boxes alone that evening, and I felt the strangest combination of grief and liberation I have ever experienced. Grief for the family I had needed them to be. Liberation from the role I had been playing without ever auditioning for it. The next morning I left before anyone was awake. I did not leave a note. Until everything shifted 6 months later in a way I had not expected. 6 months of distance taught me things that years of proximity never could. I learned that I was capable of far more than I had been allowed to discover at home, because at home my energy had always been redirected before it could fully become something. In my new city I worked without interruption. I built routines that belonged entirely to me. I made friends who knew me only as I was now, not as the reliable middle daughter who sorted things out. I learned what it felt like to have a weekend that was simply mine. Back home things had apparently become more complicated without me. My mother mentioned it briefly in a phone call, careful, edited mentions of things being harder to manage. Tarek had apparently expected Hannah to absorb some of what I had handled. Hannah had expected the same of Tarek. Neither had done it willingly. I listened and I did not offer to fix it. That was new. That was the most significant change in me. Not the city or the job or the apartment. The simple ability to hear about a problem in my family and not immediately reach for a way to solve it. Then my father called on a Tuesday evening. He almost never called me directly. We had always communicated more through my mother as an intermediary. His voice was quieter than I was used to. He said he had been thinking since I left. He said he had watched me my entire life handle things and he had let it happen without examining it properly. That he had told himself it was just Rania's nature. That some people were built for stepping up and she was one of them. He said he understood now that was not a nature I had been born with. It was a role I had been placed in by people who found it convenient and never questioned the cost to me. He said he was sorry. It was the first apology I had ever received from my father for anything. I held the phone and I let the words land in me fully before I responded. I told him that I loved him. That I loved all of them. But that I had needed to disappear from that role to find out who I actually was underneath it. And that the person I was finding was someone I genuinely liked. Someone with her own needs and her own direction and her own life that did not exist in service of everyone else's comfort. He said, "I am glad you went." I cried after that call. Long and quietly and with a sense of release I had been carrying toward for years. Here is what I know now. Disappearing is not abandonment. Sometimes it is the only honest thing left to do. When you have been so present for so long that people have confused your presence with obligation, the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop being available and let everyone discover what they were actually capable of. My family learned to manage. Not perfectly. Not without difficulty. But they learned. And I learned something far more valuable. I learned that I was never the backup plan. I was the person who had agreed to play that role because no one had ever shown me I deserved to be someone's first choice. The day I showed that to myself, the day I packed those boxes and left before dawn, was the day I finally became the main character of my own life. Not the supporting role in everyone else's. Mine.